Thank you, everybody. There's about 500 people registered. We'd like to welcome you to the COVID-19 Impact on Residential Real Estate webinar. I'm Dimitri Damascus, the co-founder and CEO of PROFILEmiami, a Miami-based real estate news and events platform. We strive to provide you with meaningful content and information to keep your businesses running as efficiently as possible. We hope everyone out there is staying safe and healthy. If you're interested in joining one of our webinars, please email me at d@profilemediallc.com. The email is above, as well as follow us on LinkedIn and Instagram at PROFILEmiami for the latest commercial and residential real estate updates. I'd like to welcome three very special panelists who are titans of the Florida condo market, along with some other initiatives. All of them have been supporters of Profile since the beginning. We thank you for your support. Our panelists today are Edgardo Defortuna, President and CEO of Fortune International Group, Jay Parker, CEO of Douglas Elliman Florida, and Carlos Rosso, President of Related Group's Condo Division. I'd like each of you to tell us a little bit about yourselves and some of the projects that you're currently working on. So Edgardo, let's start with you.
Thank you, Dimitri. Fortune has been around for over 35 years now as a general brokerage organization, as a development sales organization, and as a developer for over 20 years. We really love and understand the Miami market and really live and breathe by it. So we develop international relations and all over the world, and of course within the US as well, to promote and market and sell all the projects, not only that we develop, but a lot of our friends developers hire us to sell. And we have developed some of the primary projects in Miami, including 405 Jades, the latest Jade signature in Sunny Isles. And we just finished the Ritz-Carlton residences in Sunny Isles, and are here to continue working on very high-end luxury residential development. So thank you for including me on this.
Thank you. Jay.
Thank you, Dimitri. It's a pleasure to be talking with all of you and an honor to be on this panel with Carlos and Edgardo. I run Douglas Elliman Real Estate here in Florida. We have both a general agent business with about 1,200 agents from Jupiter, Florida down to South Miami and across the state into St. Petersburg. We also have a development marketing business where we represent some of the finest developers in South Florida with projects from Palm Beach County all the way down to Miami. We're thrilled to be here. I've been in Miami since I went to law school here, and it's certainly one of the most unique times I've ever faced in this market. But we're proud to be here and proud to be talking with you all.
Thank you. Carlos.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Dimitri, for including me in this panel. A pleasure to be with both Jay and Edgardo, both friends and colleagues. And the Related Group is the largest developer in South Florida. We were founded in 1979 by George Perez. We have right now around 6 million square feet of residential and rental properties, mainly our multifamily and our affordable housing division. And in the condo division, during this cycle, we completed around 8,000 units. These are challenging times, but we'll overcome. We'll come out stronger. And we are very confident that very soon it's going to be back to normal.
Excellent, thank you. So I know all you guys know each other pretty well. You've all worked together. So I tend to try to step back and let you guys have a conversation amongst yourselves. So let's start with our first question. What are your guys' personal outlooks on how COVID-19 will ultimately affect the South Florida residential real estate market? And whoever wants to go.
I'll go. We are sure, as I said before, that this crisis, it's going to position again Florida as a prime location for real estate. We were remembering today that only a year ago we were in the middle of the Zika crisis. If you remember, it was really 12 months ago that nobody wanted to come down to Florida because of Zika. And since then, we've completely forgotten about Zika. And here we are again, with another pandemic this one is global and it has hit everybody, but I think people are going to put things in perspective. And particularly with my friends in New York, who are passing through harder times than we are here, they're all saying that right now, it's a great time to look at Florida as an option, as a place not only to live because of the taxes, but because of the advantages that it has obviously shown during this crisis. We have a lot less cases than New York and our feeder markets, and people are looking seriously to moving down. And I'm sure that when the waters come down, we're going to see a rebound of buyers flocking now to South Florida.
Yeah, Carlos, I would add to that. I think we've all anticipated with the shelter in place that we would see a reduction in business, and naturally we've seen a decrease in volume at Douglas Elliman, which I'm sure is representative of the entire South Florida market. What's equally amazing to me is the ability of so many realtors and developers to continue to transact business. Each week that goes by, we do conduct business both on our general platform and alongside our developers, and it's really extraordinary to see the perseverance, determination, but also the respect and the integrity that many of the realtors in our markets are displaying and finding alternatives to show property and working together with their clients, whether they be clients like Edgardo or Carlos, or individual clients that they're working with that are cooperating with one another to find solutions to transact business in this time. I ultimately think this will produce some very opportunistic change in the way that agents conduct themselves and in the way that developers plan out their initial marketing strategies, because we realize that not only the professionals on our side, but also our clients are very comfortable looking at real estate in this way. And although I don't believe it will ever replace or come close to replacing the professionalism of the realtor, I think that it is opening our eyes to new ways to conduct business. And I believe, like Carlos said, I think that we are going to come out of this very strong. I think that there's been a lot of business that's been sort of set aside or delayed or put into a holding pattern, and I expect all of that to spring back when we come out of this. Edgardo?
Yeah, I basically echo both of your comments. I think that the meaning of home and the meaning of where you live, it really took a very significant meaning on during this time, and we're so uniquely positioned here to reap the benefits of it. I mean, the lifestyle that South Florida in general provides, it's so unique and so well positioned. And not only with New York, we were already seeing the benefits of New York from a tax-based point of view, but now with this even more. I mean, we hear the people that are living in New York that haven't been able to go to the Hamptons or something are saying, I wish we were in Miami, or some of the ones that have second homes in Miami really jump into their planes or got here anyway, because the lifestyle that they can afford here is completely different than living in a building in the middle of Manhattan. So I think that we're very well positioned to reap the benefits of that. But even farther, the Latin American clients that we have, that in some cases we had listings or rentals of their units and they ask us to put it on hold, not to sell them or not to rent it, because as soon as the ability to come to Miami opens up, they're planning on coming here because they fear the situation over in their countries, especially when the winter would come over there to our summer. So we're really uniquely positioned to have the benefits of when this passes on, and we really have to do the homework to position ourselves and to get enough leads so that we can transact when this situation goes away.
It's interesting, Edgardo. I've also heard that some of the Latin American high net worth families are looking again at the United States as a safe haven for their capital. Even though I'm optimistic that all of us will recover at a similar pace, we recently transacted a very significant deal in New York City with a family out of Peru that was looking to ensure that their capital would be safe. And to some extent, I think some of those same flight capital dynamics will reemerge in the state of Florida.
Oh, absolutely. I think that they all are realizing that obviously they wish they had most of their assets in dollars, and their currencies are deteriorating on a daily basis, and having things in dollar, and especially in real estate, that potentially with all this infusion of cash that the government is putting into as rescue packages, is going to create upward pricing mobility. So I think that having it in real estate and having it in bricks and mortar is a great smart thing to do, and their culture is like that. They really always invested in property. So it's going to be even more now.
You know, so now we'll get the benefits of both the tax reform, the number of people retiring and reaching that stage in life where they can look at Florida, but also this additional sort of less prevalent element of the last 12 months, the flight capital and the Latin American buyer, which I really think is a very significant boost for our market in South Florida.
As you know, Dimitri, you know, we have projects in Brazil, and we have also projects in Argentina, and we have buyers in both markets, and in Mexico too. You know, they all look at the U.S. with such jealousy. You know, they say it's incredible that you have a government, you know, whether you like it or not, but that has reacted so fast and has started sending checks and help, you know, to everybody, that has lowered interest to zero. So they feel at a complete disadvantage vis-a-vis of us that are here developing, you know, because they see that the government immediately understands the incentives that they need to put in place to try to control the effects of this calamity, you know. And it's very interesting that they all want to have something here, because they all say in a market and in an economy like that, the chances of recovering and the chances of getting protected when something like this happens are shown and are more than what they have in their own countries, you know, with their own currency.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing as well.
So do you guys think there will be any permanent changes from this COVID crisis? Jay, I know you mentioned that there's still going to be the importance of the realtor, but maybe on either like sales velocity or pricing, or where the buyers are coming from?
Well, you know, it's interesting because our inventory throughout most of the markets that Elliman is in Florida is at low levels. And one might think that with inventory being at the levels that it's currently at, that we would see a higher degree of price appreciation. But I sort of credit the stability of our pricing to the success of our market. I think that we've enjoyed a relatively significant increase in pricing since the last recession. And yet it seems now that the stability in the market, the depth of the buyers that are buying in our market, as opposed to the recession where, you know, anybody that had a pulse was trying to buy expensive projects that Carlos and Edgardo were building, where today you actually need to be qualified in order to apply for the financing and secure it. I think we've done a pretty good job, intentional or not, of hedging us against real price retraction. And I'm optimistic that as we come out of this, there will undoubtedly be more inventory coming onto the market, because a lot of it pulled back as we ended March. But I think that the demand for our market is going to remain pretty strong, and ultimately we'll see stable yet consistent appreciation in value. What do you guys think?
I totally agree with that. I mean, we've been sort of waiting and absorbing the inventory that was been developed in the last 8-10 years, and there are, of course, the scarcity of sites is it's an issue that we all have to deal with, but and some of us or all of us are moving a little bit farther up north in the coast of Florida to find waterfront sites, but there will be opportunities on the land side for some of those funds or some people that were over leveraged on land, and the developers are going to take advantage of those opportunities. So I think that new projects are going to come, and with some of the characteristics that are more needed at this time, and better technology, and more private situations, and home offices, those type of things are going to be prevalent in the new wave of projects, but the opportunities are going to be there, and the developers that have the experience and they're well capitalized are going to take advantage of that, because the barrier entry is going to be a little bit more difficult in the sense that the banks are finance only people that are very credible and that have the financial strength to do it. So I think that our group, obviously related, and the projects that Jay represents are well positioned to capitalize on this.
I see in the chat, I know the question and answer will be at the end, but my next question was actually kind of along what Edgardo said, and a lot of the questions that are coming in right now are. But besides just Miami, what markets in South Florida do we expect to see the most change in?
Well, I'm sorry, Jay. I mean, we see it again together with Carlos and Related. We did a very, very successful project in Auberge in Fort Lauderdale, and we realized that not only the demand but the pricing was very significant to or comparable to the high-end projects in Miami. So to find that type of land and to find that type of opportunity, I think that Fort Lauderdale, Pompano, Boca Raton, even Palm Beach are really great potential markets that we're all looking at to do the next projects on the waterfront. I mean, of course, the urban part of Miami is going to continue to thrive, and people want to have smaller units on the pied-à-terre and units that are investment type driven units in the downtown area, including, of course, all the great new neighborhoods that Miami has been coming up with, the Design District, Wynwood, Midtown, and Edgewater.
Yeah, I'm glad you positioned it that way, Edgardo, because I agree with you 100%, and we've seen it as we move up the coast and across that the less densely populated markets have realized a resurgence from Lauderdale North, Palm Beach and West Palm Beach. We're currently working with 2 developments there, La Clara and now Forte. And I agree with you, it's some of these markets that actually had land in pristine locations that made sense economically that we're now seeing additional development. I'm also seeing the west coast of Florida, where we're in St. Petersburg, is a hotspot. I think Carlos has a number of sites there or Related. And I think people are gonna look for options. I think there are so many people that have their eyeball on South Florida that it's our collective responsibility to define the best products and put them in the best available locations. I'm very, I like what Edgardo said, by the way, about looking at what developers are going to bring to the market and being creative about it and leveraging the talent that I know Edgardo and Carlos possess at a level unlike many others. But I also think it's important to recognize, and our chairman, Howard Lorber, mentioned this to us, that it's a very powerful part of the mind that we seem to forget about bad things very, very quickly. And while I'm hopeful that we will quickly develop a vaccine for COVID-19, without it even, I think that very quickly as we resume a normal life, people will start to forget. And I really do hope that there are things from this that people don't forget and that they embrace as we move forward. But I agree with all those markets Edgardo commented on.
We are looking, or we were actually getting ready to launch our project in Pompano before the crisis started, and then we put a halt on it. But we have also projects in Tampa and St. Pete and Sanibel on the West Coast. We obviously still have a couple of units, not a lot, to sell here in Coconut Grove, in Park Grove. We continue doing deals, amazingly enough. I think what we said at the beginning, that these New Yorkers that are looking at Miami and are looking at it as in a more serious way after seeing the real impact of COVID-19 are thinking, and they're moving on deals. We are seeing sales in those projects, and we are getting ready to restart as soon as we get the green light, from the state, which we hope it's going to be very soon.
Let me ask you guys, there might be some economic benefits to South Florida. I know I was reading a lot of the New Yorkers coming down are looking between $15,000 and $80,000 a month for rentals. Like typically that would be a lot higher than a lot of the South Floridian markets would hold historically. The New Yorkers are also bringing a lot more, you could say, like white collar jobs with higher pay grades. Could this have a ultimately positive effect on South Florida real estate pricing, even if the rest of the country might be hurt?
Let me also add one thing. Look what we are doing. You are in Connecticut, and we are here in Florida. This is
Correct. Yep.
happening, you know, with hedge fund managers and with bankers that move to Florida, and suddenly now they find that it's so easy, you know, to conduct business through video conference, and so effective. And at least for us, you know, we have daily calls, you know, on the services, whether it's Zoom, Vimeo, any of the services. And really people are much more focused. The meetings are a lot shorter and we are a lot more effective. So I think that transition of somebody that has a company in New York and that was thinking, oh, maybe if I move to Florida, I lose contact one way or another, you know, during this month, they have tested it and they've seen that it's actually a lot easier than what we thought. You know, we can continue conducting business without going to the office. We continue doing deals. We continue showing units, sometimes through 3D or through different types of representations. And we're trying to find ways to reach to people that are not necessarily able to travel right now. And that's a little bit, I think, of the biggest change that I'm seeing, that people are adapting to this way of working offsite a lot easier because they prove it. We've all proved it during these times.
I agree wholeheartedly with that. As it relates to the rentals, I think what's happened is the demand for significant rentals just went through the roof as so many people were trying to escape densely populated urban neighborhoods. And as a result, many of the innovative and creative realtors looked to projects or properties that were not for sale product and ultimately sought out potential rentals. And naturally in those scenarios where someone's ultimately looking to sell the asset, but it's going to entertain a rental, they're going to take the premium on charge. What I think is going to end up happening is many of those people that have come down here for 3 months or 4 months, they're going to realize that they can continue with their life here and live a higher quality of life with better weather and lower taxes. And you know, now that Carlos and Edgardo have worked together with so many other incredible developers to deliver a product that is really superior, if not equal to any of the best products in the world, it's making that transition so much easier. And I also think that there were some people who understood all the great drivers for Florida pre-pandemic. And now that they're forced to be here, whether it's by choice or because of the fact that they had to leave where they were at and their children aren't in school, I think a lot of them are evaluating staying here long-term. Something else that I didn't consider until recently, I was talking with Gus Rubio, my chief operating officer, about those people that were nearing retirement and have now been, you know, put into this position where they've been at home staring at their four walls, which I've said have never gotten so much airtime in their lives. They're now saying, hey, let's just make the move now. Maybe there's some opportunities for us. So I really think that we're going to see a very powerful surge in the South Florida real estate market post-pandemic.
Yeah, and I think that there's another factor. Hopefully, during the summer the restrictions go away and we're able to move more freely. I think that a lot of people, especially the wealthy crowd in the U.S., it's not going to travel overseas. I mean, they're not going to go to Europe. They're not going to go any place far away, but rather stay on vacation in the U.S. And of course, South Florida it's a great place to do that. And I think that they're going to find out how great this is. So the traffic that typically our summers are pretty slow. If the restrictions are lifted, I forecast to have a wonderful summer as far as business is concerned, because everybody is going to be here, is going to fall in love with everything that we have. And eventually, like Jay say, is going to want to have a piece of Miami if they already don't do so. So I think that the localized traveling, meaning within the U.S., which people are going to feel a lot more comfortable about doing, is going to really also give a big boost to South Florida.
What lesson?
Dimitri, one thing to throw in, you know, if you want to start talking about how we think different sectors are going to react, is really, for example, office. You know, how do we think office is going to react with people working more and more from home? You know, and you know, the co-working spaces. You know, those are things that are going to come a little more into question, I think, in this cycle. because of the obvious effects of what COVID-19 has had. But on the residential side, you know, I think that the demand is going to be even greater because, as I said before, I think people now are going to realize that they can combine their lifestyle, the lifestyle that they wanted in South Florida, with their ability to continue conducting business, you know, which is, I think it's very, very important.
You know, I think on that point, it's very interesting. Our incredible creative team at Douglas Elliman launched a campaign that focuses on the home. And it really is just a short video about, you know, saying thank you. Thank you for the warmth that you've provided us over this time. And I really believe that all of us are looking at those walls and saying, is this what I want? Is it different? Could I do different? Do I want to allocate my resources differently? Because we all know that more than ever before, that there's nowhere more important. I'd like to say that a lot of people out there have really figured out how to make a house a home. And I think that that's going to only continue to ignite our industry in Florida.
And you know, I'm looking at the questions that people are asking. I don't know, Dimitri, whether I can
go for it.
Ping-ponging. One of them is how do you see the different market sectors, particularly existing capital investment from the stock equity market? You know, I think it's a very interesting question. You know, if you see the volatility of the market, you know, I look at my account and I think to myself, you know, hell, you know, I should have bought another condo, you know, and rent and continue renting those units, get the appreciation from the real estate. And, you know, of my tenants, I have personal units, you know, I haven't had, you know, anybody, you know, late on their payments. At related level, you know, we have 6 million square feet of residential, around 6,000 units rented. You know, our collections were phenomenal for April. We had 92% of our tenants paying rent in time. So if you ask me, I think that it's a lot safer, continues to prove, you know, that it's a lot safer than the stock market and with a lot less volatility. Of course, somebody's going to tell me, hey, you know, I can buy now, you know, Carnival at X amount. I don't know whether Carnival is going to continue the company, you know. I think real estate will continue as a solid asset class. You know, the beach is the beach, and poor Dimitri is in Connecticut, and we're here, you know, in front of this lush landscape or in front of the beach, and thinking, you know, how lucky we are that we are doing what we like on assets that I think in the long run are going to continue maintaining their value because of what Edgardo said. You know, we all have to go further north to find the same type of properties that we were selling here at a fraction of the price a couple of years ago. So it's a long staying game, real estate. You know, real estate are not stocks. So you don't buy and sell real estate thinking, you don't go into real estate thinking that you are going to sell the next day and make, you know, twice the money. But if you have the holding power, you're going to do much better than the average stock market.
Yeah,
You know, I wanted to add to that because it's something that actually, again, Howard talks about a lot. Howard Lorber, our chairman, always says real estate's a very comfortable asset to own. You go out and buy stocks today, if you invest a significant amount of money into any one of these volatile stocks, which I'm not suggesting you do or don't, every single moment of every single day during trading hours, you're going to be able to look at it and figure out what it's worth. When you buy a piece of real estate, you know what it's worth when you buy it. You might think you know what it's worth, but you don't really know until ultimately you sell it. So you can convince yourself all along that period of time that it's worth whatever it is you think it's worth. And in most cases, like Carlos says, it goes up in value. So I think the comfort is going to help us to, again, elicit more transactions and get people to take the capital they may have pulled out from a stock market and put it into something that they know will be there and will more than likely go up in the long term.
Yeah, but in addition to that, I mean, the other day I was helping my son, my 12-year-old, because he had to write an essay about what was his most valuable possession. And I thought it was going to be the Xbox or the phone or something like that. And he said, no, Papi, it's home. I mean, it's our house. How could we have anything better than our home? I mean, look at I can jump in the pool and paddleboard outside, and even meet with my friends that come from their boats, and we paddleboard together, keeping social distance. I mean, what better? I mean, and he wrote a whole essay about home being the most valuable possession, and that's for a 12-year-old. Imagine people that really now realize how important is the place you live. I mean, it's huge.
I just want to ask you, when was the last time you had the time to actually spend the time with your 12-year-old writing an essay?
But I like Carlos was saying, I work a lot harder now than I worked before. I attend 5 or 10 minutes a day because the ability to connect in a second rather than driving an hour to go to a sales center, it's a lot easier and sometimes even more effective. So the reality is we never experienced our home the way we are experienced now. I mean, when we were building it, we spent like 2.5 years figuring out the best plans and building the home. And I said, well, I mean, it really now I appreciate what we've done and how well and functionable the home is. And I think it's very important in general. People are realizing what they like and what they don't like and what they're missing. So the definition of housing and how people live is going to really, really be thought again after this is over.
So I wanted to explore something a little bit. Everybody's always focused on pricing, but based off kind of what you've been saying, Edgardo, do we think the product and the consumer demand might change? Like when you guys think about development in the future, will future buildings maybe have a little different aspect to it? I know people might want private gyms, stuff like this, where even if we get back to normal, will social distancing and what we've experienced have a permanent effect in what their demands may be?
In a short time, probably, yes. But I think that I agree with Carlos, people have relatively short memories, and this pandemic doesn't happen hopefully once every 100 years. So I think that we are gonna all, hopefully when we find a cure or a vaccine for this, we're all gonna relax some. But again, just the regular day-to-day things. I mean, I'm considering every week, even when we all open up and everything is normal, to take a day a week to work from home. I'll be more efficient and be able, like Jay said, to help my son write an essay or do something with my family that is more valuable than sitting at the office, because I could accomplish the same thing sitting here. So those type of things are going to change, and they open our eyes to. And also, we used to travel a lot and continue to do to Latin America and the rest of the world to promote Miami. But with the tools that we have, really we've been seeing that it's obviously people are more difficult to pull the trigger today on making a transaction, but almost the same showings that you can do at a sales center, you can do in a computer today. And certainly we're never going to lose the human touch and the trust from people to people and the chemistry. But a lot of the tasks can be done within our walls and really be almost as effective or more effective than before.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the only non-developer in this panel, but I would tell you, I don't think that much is going to change as it relates to the long-term design and development. I think that the parameters are so broad and so different, and all developers that we've had the pleasure of working with, and even though I haven't worked with Edgardo, I admire all of the work that he has done.
Thanks.
And I would tell you that I think that people are going to, in the short term, look for ways to access their condos without touching things. And they're probably going to have a little bit more resistance when it comes to valet. And we're going to probably see guidelines put in place by very talented property management companies and boards to enforce social distancing until a vaccine is put in place. But I think people are still going to want to live fully and enjoy the amenitization that has been developed in Florida and a great company that they've been able to enjoy. I think the hardest part of this is not seeing the people you love, and even seeing the people that you may not necessarily know that well, but they're fillers to your environment. So I think that we'll see some short-term changes, but I think in the long term, we're going to continue to forge ahead doing all the wonderful things that both Related and Fortune and all the amazing developers that I also work with have done.
There's an interesting question here. How soon you think we'll bounce back everything settles and gets back on track.
If you can answer that, Carlos, I'll take it up.
I think everything will be normal when we have a vaccine. You know, I think until then, we're going to be very, hopefully, well-received guidelines to help us all function as effectively as possible. Look, the first call I made about shutting down a sales gallery was to Related. And I can tell you that the call was very well received. They were as interested in we were in protecting both the salespeople, their staff, our staff, the clients that came in. But at the same time, we were thinking, okay, what's the solution? Let's figure out how to do this. And I take my hat off to every developer I'm working with, including Carlos, because together we're doing deals. We're showing properties. We're doing tours. They're virtual, but they're resulting in contracts being signed and deals closing. So I'm very grateful to our entire development community and everyone in our industry for really working together to find these incredible solutions.
Yeah, thank God it happens at this time where everybody's connected and everything can be done virtually. I mean, at Ritz-Carlton, the residences in Sunny Isles, we got TCO the first week in March to start closings. And of course, nobody could come to close. I mean, a lot of the buyers are foreigners or at least out of the city. And we've closed 85, 86 units already. A loan that we had for 212 million, it's down to 19. It's almost paid off. And almost every transaction was done virtually. I mean, virtual notarizations, virtual financing, virtual closings, everything. It's so well set up. I mean, we just had it all in our hands. We didn't use it as much. But I venture to say that a lot of people are not going to necessarily have to come to closings. I mean, especially if they trust the product and they trust the developer, they can do it from their own countries and then come when they need to come or when they were planning on coming for vacation anyway. So things have changed dynamically and we adjusted very, very well. And again, the fact that if there is any real estate that it has the possibility of supporting and continue increasing in value, because the retail and the office and stuff are going to go through a little bit of harder time until they find their balance again. But at residential and with the place you live, it's a key component of everything. And so I think that we're all lucky in the place we live and the business we're doing.
Yeah. And I think what Edgardo said, you know, in his example of the Ritz shows a little bit also where we are as a market. You know, most of the projects are being completed right now, and all the loans have been paid off. You know, I haven't heard of not anybody with a real problem with financing. So, which is great for Florida. You know, we're landing the eagle, as we say. You know, with all the units closed, everybody paid off, and with no real concerns. I think the market this time in this cycle has been a lot more mature in terms of capital structure. You know, we all borrowed a lot less, and we developed also less. So, which is great for the future of real estate. You know, there's not going to be an oversupply of condos, and people that bought these units are going to see the tremendous values that they're in. You know, when you go and you see Armani, or you see the Ritz, or even you go and you visit the job that we together with Edgardo in Lauderdale, you know, you realize that, wow, you know, these were incredible buildings. It was more of a boutique cycle, I would call it. You know, there was a lot less speculation with the higher deposits that we demanded in the cycle. So we are in a great place to restart again, you know, with really no problems. On top of everything, you know, we are starting with interest rates are nearly zero. So the ability of people to finance, you know, we have a mortgage company with Edgardo too. So, you know, we are seeing what is happening with rates and the ability of people to take loans and to finance whatever balance they had on their pre-construction deals. You know, really, I think we are very lucky, you know, that this hit us at a moment that most of our inventory was gone.
You know, I want to add, because you touched on this, both of you, that I get asked the question a lot about, is this the same situation as the last recession, 2007, 2008? And I talked about this before, but the variables are quite significant. The mortgage standards are very different than they were in the last recession, as we all know. You needed to be able to heat up a glass to get a mortgage. Prices, as we talked about a little bit, Dimitri, are not soaring out of control. The appreciation in pricing has been stable and nowhere near what we saw in the time that preceded the crash in 08. We don't have a surplus of homes on the market, as Carlos and Edgardo said. With projects selling well and inventory at lows, there's not that much surplus on the market. So we have, in fact, in many cases, a shortage. In the last round, in 2007, 2008, houses became too expensive. So we had, we had prices high, income relatively lower, and mortgage rates higher than ever. 14 years ago, the prices were so high, the wages were low, rates were over 6%. Today, prices are high, but wages have increased and mortgage rates are at historical lows. But I think the most interesting part, as a real hedge against any real pain in the residential space, is that people have equity. Whether it's all the buyers at the Ritz or any one of our projects, these buyers have 50% deposits or in and around that price point. So people aren't walking. People are actually looking forward to closing and looking forward. I know at Park Grove, as we finish off the last of 3 towers, Tower 1, every single one of our buyers is just chomping at the bit to get to the finish line and move into their new property. So I think we can distinguish the pandemic, which is a health crisis, from the recession, which was a global banking crisis. And I hope that we come out of this with the differences as well.
A lot of people are asking, what do we think the prices are going to be? Are we going to see a reduction in prices, and are there going to be opportunities there? And of course, it's a hard question to answer in a global basis, but I think that the developer prices are going to hold very steady because, again, the lower inventory supplies and the lower financing leverage on each project, and most of the loans are going to be paid or are paid already. So there is not going to be any significant downward in prices. The biggest question mark is resales of some of the units of investors, especially foreign investors that might need to sell the unit, and how are they going to react to lowering prices or lower offers. And that might create a little bit of a downward price pressure on prices, but in a way it also creates an opportunity because people are going to perceive that there are opportunities in Miami, and they come. And they, of course, they're going to try to get the opportunities, but they all have good taste and they all look around. So eventually they look at the cheap resale in a building that they think they can buy for $400 a foot, but then they fall in love with $1,000 a foot, Park Grove or Jade or whatever it is, and they buy the better product. So I think that even if the prices suffer to some extent and in the resale market because people, because of rate of exchanges or need in their own countries, need to sell quickly, that is going to drive, which is more or less what happened in the past financial crisis, when banks lower prices very significantly in some units and attracted a great wave of buyers that, eventually they bought originally a few cheap units that the banks were offering, but then they continued to buy and created a great momentum in Miami. So I think that even though it might be some months of potential opportunities or lower prices because of needs of individuals, I think that the overall market is going to benefit from, even on the price point of view.
Yeah, and I think everybody's working together, compared to the previous cycle. I think banks are working together with buyers, and developers are working together with renters. So as long as the whole payment chain, is supported by big injections of cash from the government, as it has happened now, this is a big difference with 2008. In 2008, we were in limbo for some time. Nobody knew whether they could close on their units because the banks didn't lend them the money, And in this particular cycle, I think people have closed with 50% in cash at least, if not more. and there's a lot less demand for financing, and the banks are working together, with particularly with the owners of multifamily, are extending 2 or 3 months of interest and delaying it to the end of the loan to help, cope with this situation. At the same time, the government is sending checks to all these tenants. So it's sort of, the suspension that we have in the financial system in this particular moment, makes it, a lot easier to move forward and to see a future, in the near future versus what we had in 2008. We are not seeing prices eroded, values eroded of assets. And it's great for Florida. It's very good for Florida.
Let me ask you guys a question. For the entry-level home buyer, the generation around my age, with the banks kind of tightening the criteria to get a mortgage, do you think it might affect that market, especially with the 10+ million Americans currently out of jobs?
Yeah, obviously, again, the banks for a while are going to be cautious, and as Carlos mentioned, our financing arm Buster is really doing a great job at helping people finance. Of course, there may be a little bit higher rates than if you could get it from a bank, but still very attractive because of the low interest rates. And there is going to be a little bit of lagging on the financing end because for 2 reasons. Banks are going to be more cautious because of the unemployment and the ability of the credit worthiness of the buyer, but also valuations are going to be an issue at the beginning because the banks are not going to be sure how to appraise these units or these houses after COVID. So it might be a little bit of a slower ramp up on the banking sector, but I think that like everything, they all are going to need to lend money, and if not, there are going to be others, because the money left in the bank at 0% of return is not going to be very attractive. So there are going to be additional private lenders if the banks don't get their act together and start lending quickly, because it really makes a lot of sense to lend based on a tangible asset like real estate or residential real estate.
Cool. And based on the chat, I had kind of seen some people discussing South Beach and also how will the landscape of Miami change. I know when I moved to Miami about 5 years ago, I was always in South Beach. Now I rarely go there. I know Carlos has built several great buildings there, but both you and Edgardo have built buildings, and Jay sold them in the more residential areas surrounding South Beach. Do you expect these New Yorkers moving down so rapidly now to, once they get to Miami and they have this rental, maybe identify South Beach isn't necessarily where they want to be and they don't want their family to be? What's your guys' take on that?
Sorry.
Go ahead, Carlos.
No, go.
Yeah, I think Miami Beach is experiencing a resurgence. I think it's got a lot to offer. I think there's a number of new dynamics that are being added to Miami Beach to sort of bring it back to the spotlight it enjoyed for so many years. You're right, Related developed so many incredible projects along the South of Fifth Corridor and many others throughout South Florida, Miami Beach. And I can tell you that I think with what we know is already coming to Miami Beach, there's a lot of eyeballs on it. It has a lot to offer. And while there are so many incredible regions within South Florida that are now as appealing as one might have thought that Miami Beach was before, they all offer their certain uniquenesses that make them particularly appealing. Years ago, when I started as a lawyer in this business, it was either Miami Beach or pretty much nowhere. Today, whether it's the Grove or Sunny Isles or Pompano Beach or Fort Lauderdale, I mean, even in Fort Lauderdale, where we're selling one of our projects, the Four Seasons Fort Lauderdale, across the street from the beach, the price points that we're achieving and the interest in that product is coming as much from New Yorkers as it is from locals. So I think South Beach will always have its desire and its shine. And I think that what's happened is it's just changed and it's going through an evolution. And I think it'll come out even sexier and more exciting and maybe a few less nightclubs, but I don't think that's really what should define South Beach anymore.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, we're selling 57 Ocean, the project on the plan, and I can tell you that the traffic before and after 3-1 any other project that we have. I mean, the appeal for Miami Beach still very, very strong, and really people love to be there. I mean, yes, they had some issues, especially way South Beach or Ocean Drive and some specific weekends of the year, but the appeal for Miami Beach still very, very strong.
I think the beauty of the cycle also that from 2010 till now, you know, Miami grew, the neighborhoods of Miami grew with separate identities. Not only separate identities in terms of their characteristics, but also in terms of pricing. So you have prices for every single wallet in Miami, you know, from the higher end, you know, basically South Beach, anything on the sand, to, you know, projects in downtown Miami or in Brickell, you know, that are more affordable and, as Carlos said, more type pied-à-terres for people who want to have a place in Miami. So the range is there. You know, it's not an issue of not finding product for the right price. It's just, as Edgardo says, you know, you're going to go and look at a unit that is $400 a square foot, and then you're going to fall in love with a unit that is $1,000 a foot. And how you stretch your dollars to get where you want, that's an individual decision. But the good thing right now is that given the choices and given the cost of finance, you know, the units that seem to be the most expensive ones still look very attractive, you know?
You know, so I would add, and I take my hat off because it was the first one that I saw. Edgardo, they did a virtual tour of 57 Ocean, and I know all of us have done that as well, whether it's with the projects we represent with Related or all of our other developers. Any of the listeners that are interested in hearing more about these projects and experiencing these virtual tours, it's quite an impressive accomplishment. You really learn about the project, whether it's through a fly-through or a virtual tour. And I really think that it's an exciting thing to see. So anyone that's interested, feel free to email either Dimitri or either of the three of us, and we're happy to share some of those virtual tours with you.
Yeah.
Great. Last question from me, and then we'll have a quick question and answer and get it wrapped up so you guys can get back to your days. But you all have pretty large companies. What steps are you guys taking to get back to the office and at the end of this COVID crisis, get back to business as usual?
We are at Related, you know, we are actually discussing right now. Hello? We're discussing right now how we think we are going to implement get back to the office plan. You know, initially in the first weeks, we were trying to divide the company into teams to be able to walk a little bit more more separated from each other. So in the office floor, we have less people, and we'll continue, you know, activating work from home for most of our secondary staff to try to minimize the density in the office. It's an interesting question. You know, it's a very interesting and very delicate question. You know, amounts of people that are going to travel in the elevators, whether we are going to receive visitors or no visitors in the office. You know, it's a challenge, but that's you know, that's what we are always rethinking real estate now. It's rethinking the way that we ourselves as a company reinvent and restart the machine at the office.
Yeah, we're doing basically the same thing from a corporate point of view, but in our sales center, including corporate, by the way, but in our sales centers, we already order masks for if the customer and the agents want to use them, or if they will use them when they're with people. And we're planning on doing only by appointment in the sales centers at the beginning until things get more normalized, and try to maintain one family per visit before scheduling somebody else, and again, making sure that if we have to show the building, the elevators are empty only for the use of that particular client or broker or family, and taking all the precautions, obviously, including strict guides on sanitation and the type of guidelines that the government is putting out in order to be as safe as possible during that transition period.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Edgardo and Carlos as it relates to the procedures and policies which we're crafting together with our corporate team and our developers as it relates to going back into the offices. Since the inception of this pandemic, we've taken significant measures to continue to provide a high level of service to our agents and their customers. We sort of serve two different groups here. We defined a new way of conducting business as business unusual. And with that, we've been connecting with our entire Douglas Elliman infrastructure on a weekly basis through national and regional town halls that are hosted by our leadership. And I think it's been very, very effective to stay in contact with people visually and to make sure that there's that level of engagement. We've provided our associates with necessary tools to efficiently work remotely. We've kept them motivated and preparing them to hit the ground by having daily meetings with each of our teams, both on the development side and on the individual side. I think it's now incumbent upon us all to work closely with our developers and our agents and our executives to put in place policies that not only mirror the direction that we receive from the federal government and our local governments, but also just have a sense of reasonableness to them. And if we want to get through this and we don't want a resurgence, we have to work together and apply as much diligence and caution to the actions we take. And I can tell you, whether it was the very first call that we had when this went down up until calls earlier today, we're committed to all using every resource we have to make sure this doesn't come back and hit us again.
Hey guys, thank you very much for your time. That was a wealth of information. I know the audience definitely enjoyed it. We will be posting this to YouTube in the next few days. So if you want to relive any of the content here, just keep an eye out. We'll be sending an email, and we really appreciate all your guys' time and insight.
Thank you, Dimitri.
It was fun. We can do it anytime you want us to do it again. I mean,
I'm hiring Edgardo's son.
Yeah, it's expensive, but I mean, I'll lend them to you.
Considering the house, it's expensive.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, guys, and I hope you enjoyed, and I look forward to getting back to Miami and seeing you guys in person again.
Stay safe.
Dimitri, gentlemen, I want to
and
thank you. I'm going to steal from my chairman with leaving every forum with a quote, and if you don't mind, I'm going to read you a quote. There are no problems we cannot solve together, and very few that we can solve by ourselves. That was Lyndon B. Johnson. I thank you all, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're working together. Take care.
Bye.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.